It's so crazy to think that we live in a world where there are so many harmful stereotypes of black people, such as being seen as quote-unquote too ghetto, being hypersexualized, being seen as lazy or criminals and thugs, just to name a few examples. And when these harmful stereotypes are put upon black people, it really can affect our livelihoods and our careers. But here's something very crazy to think about. When these harmful stereotypes of black people, if they're placed upon someone who is not black, that can actually elevate their career. And in this video, we're going to delve deep into why that is the case. How and why using the black community, using black caricatures and acting black can get you a career. So stay tuned for this. Alright guys, so first we're going to talk a bit about music. It goes without saying, black people have impacted and created and shaped every single mainstream genre out right now. But despite this, historically speaking, so many black artists and so many black musicians and songwriters haven't often gotten the praises that they deserve in mainstream attention and mainstream success. And something that we still see to this day is that there have been so many successful white artists of the past and in present where their whole team of people, their whole team of writers have been black people. And to give a further testimony of this, a songwriter and musician who we all know, Money Long, you know, made for me, just for me. Well, if you don't know who Money Long is, she's a viral R&B singer and Grammy Award-winning singer, may I add. And she's also a very talented songwriter. And on her Instagram, she posted that the president of Atlantic Records asked her to write soulful songs for non-melanated artists.
What?
So of course with the main genres, R&B, rap, hip-hop, pop, black people have really pioneered and pushed that in the mainstream attention, but also just equally as prevalent behind the scenes with songwriting and producing and all of that good stuff. Which is why we have so many things like the Mobo's Music of Black Origin Awards, the BET Awards, Black Entertainment Awards show, Black History Month, Black Music Month. We actually have to make a conscious effort to keep uplifting and, I don't know why that was hard to say, to keep uplifting the voices of black musicians and black artists, present, past and future. Truth be told, when you think of genres like jazz, R&B, hip-hop, grime, you mainly kind of center that with black artists and black musicians. So what happens now when there are white people who enter that space of music? Lots of mainstream rap has been pioneered from lots of black Americans in the 70s and 80s. During this time, for so many black Americans, poverty, crime and social unrest were very prevalent. So hip-hop and rap became an outlet for young people in black communities to express their struggles, creativity and identity. Rap is a genre that's really been birthed by black people wanting to express themselves, black people and marginalized groups really just amplifying their voices through the style of rap. So contextually, from the 80s to the 90s, of course, in the early 2000s, but let's focus more so in the 80s and 90s, rap became so huge as a mainstream genre. However, so many rappers face so much discrimination and lots of political agendas to just kind of keep their music on a hush-hush. I feel if you think of all the mainstream genres right now, rap is a genre that really stands out because so many people overlook just how talented rappers are. And of course there are bad ones, but there are bad musicians in every single bunch. What I mean by that is there have been so many amazing lyricists and MCs who have come up in the game or are upcoming right now who are so good at writing and so good at conversating and making you feel a certain way through their music. And in my opinion, that's basically poetry. And I feel if someone was to say, oh yeah, I'm a poet, people would be like, oh, that's beautiful. People kind of respect poetry as a genre in itself. But if someone was to say that they're a rapper, it has this negative connotation. It's oh, all you're rapping about is knives and guns and do. But when that's really not the case for all rappers, of course. Which is why with this in context, in the 80s and the 90s, and even more so in this day, but I'm going to focus on that time period, if there was a mainstream rap song, or if there was a rap song that garnished huge success, maybe in the Grammys or the BET Awards or all the other music award shows, contextually maybe those mainstream songs wouldn't get recognized because it was seen as black noise, black people music. And I wanted to give this context before I spoke about culture appropriation versus cultural appreciation, because if there was a white rapper, even to this day if they came out, just because they're a rapper or just because they're an R&B singer doesn't automatically mean that they are culturally appropriating black people. But what I do think that they have to do is just appreciate the fact that they are a guest in the hip-hop, rap, black music space. And even Macklemore, a white rapper, spoke about this. I'm going to insert the clip here.
I'm a guest.
Yeah.
M's a guest. Doesn't matter how good we get. Doesn't matter how great Eminem is. We're guests in the culture. 100%. And
That's not to say that I don't belong here. I absolutely belong here. But you still have to realize that this is not your house.
Okay, so like to call like Macklemore or like other white rappers like a guest into like the hip hop space or like black music, that's not a bad thing to say. That's not a degrading thing to say. It doesn't mean that they don't deserve like radio play or attention. It just means to say that like you need to remember like contextually, truth be told, this isn't your music. Like this isn't your culture. Like no, it's not your music. And another reason why I say that is like when it comes to harmful stereotypes that rap music possesses, that only focuses on black rappers. With like the mainstream white artists of today, like that's the, what's their faces? G-Eazy's, Jack Harlow, Iggy Azalea.
Finish line with fire marks. She on the pants got spit like a plaster. After bench her did like don't like dash your face. Them motorbike.
Macklemore. I can't remember any more white rappers.
Tire marks, tire marks.
With those white rappers that I've just mentioned now, they don't have to get told or have to deal with the criticism that they're too explicit or that they're too ghetto or that they're like leeching and promoting like, you know, harmful stereotypes that rap music possesses because they white. Which is why like white rappers, when they enter like the rap scene, they really can be culture appreciators. No, that's not how we speak, Roderick. When white rappers enter the rap scene, culture appreciation is something that I feel like they have to possess and enjoy if they want to actually have longevity in the rap scene. Because despite how hip hop and rap music has been built up of black struggles, they have an enormous privilege in terms of like reaching like mainstream success and like marketing themselves as a white rapper in comparison to black rappers. I don't want to get that message across. Like there's absolutely nothing wrong. If you want to rap and you white, you go rap. That's fine. Like I'm not telling you not to rap or anything like that. But what happens when there are people who aren't black, who step on the toes of black musicians and black artists in order to reach their desired goals? That's what we call culture appropriation. The first person that I want to talk about is someone who everyone knows, Mileycyrus. Mileycyrus in 2013, dare I say, was going through her bangers era, and that was a moment in time and that was a moment in history. You had to be there. Miley was like, this is like my FU era, like F the Disney, I'm not Hannah Montana anymore, like I'm trying to show you guys that I'm Miley Cyrus. I'm tired of like this Disney Channel stardom image. That's what I personally got from that bangers era. So how did she do that? Well, she changed her image up. She went from looking like this to looking like this. You know, she started collaborating with Wiz Khalifa, Michael Made It, a whole bunch of rap artists. What's his face again? The guy that had will.i.am. One thing that I always give sympathy for is that it's generally not easy going from like a child star to going to like a mainstream like artist and people still seeing you as like a Disney kid. I feel like someone who's fallen victim to that is Sky Jackson. Someone who I'm actually going to talk about later on this video, stick around, is that people still see Sky Jackson and they still see her as Zuri Ross from Jessie. And that's something that like Miley was going through. It's like, I'm not Hannah Montana anymore. I'm not like that Disney kid that put like your kids to sleep anymore. Like I actually want to be like my own person and my own artist. But I don't want to be that friend that's too woke. But you see people like Keke Palmer, people like Coco Jones who were in like the exact same situation as her. Let's say they had a bangers era. Let's say they were on stage twerking and like they were smoking weed at like, what was it? It was like the VMA. She was like smoking weed.
Thank you guys very much.
If they did that, would it be seen as iconic? Or would it be seen as too ratchet and too ghetto? Okay, something to think about is like, how comes when Miley went through like her rebellious, like F the world stage, she just started collaborating with black artists and doing hip hop music? That's something to think about. And like to further prove the point that she used hip hop as like a stepping stool to like elevate her career, but didn't really care for the culture. After like the bangers era, I haven't seen like any hip hop songs from her again. Like now she's like, oh, like I can buy myself flowers. Like she's white artist again, you know. She doesn't really need any black artists, people around her anymore. Like she's comfortable now. Okay, for some people they might think, okay, maybe Roderick, you're reaching, but we can't lie here. There are lots of people who use black culture as like a costume, and then maybe they get some like hip hop buzz from it, and then they're like, okay, thank you so much, black community. Now I'm gonna go back to being white again. And I feel like someone who I've kind of thought of who's done that is Post Malone. I remember when Post Malone came to the stage, this was the first picture I saw of him, his album cover. And for the longest time, I thought that boy was light skinned. Like, I heard him on the radio. I was like, oh, I like this song. So the album cover, I thought that boy was mixed. You know, that orange like lighting was like deceiving me. But like now looking at it, I can tell that he's not black, of course, because like you can see like lots of scalp. You know, the braids were probably hurting him a lot. And then when Post Malone entered the scene, he was with like all the rappers. He had the grills, he had the braids, and then now he's much so with Morgan Wallen and Taylor Swift. He's back home. Posty's back home. Okay, for the next point in this video, I really want to talk about ragebait and how using the black community through ragebait can actually really get you a career. You could be thinking, what is ragebait? So ragebaiting is used to describe a tactic to attract, maintain, and increase a base of supporters and followers. Okay, but before I talk about ragebaiting, I want to cast your mind back to 2020. I know it was a very dark time, but walk with me because context is needed. In June 2020, for context, I was 16 years old. And I'm someone who, like, since I was like 12, 13, I've always been like someone who's wanted to raise awareness on black issues and black subjects. So when everything that was happening with Black Lives Matter and how mainstream it got in 2020, it was even though it was horrible contextually with so many things that were happening and how it came about, I was very happy to see just how widespread Black Lives Matter and raising awareness on black issues actually got. I really thought that 2020 was such a pivotal year because I just felt that people were not only listening but actually acting on things, and that we're actually going to see change like post June, July 2020. And I feel like someone who was very, very prominent during that time for me was Sky Jackson. Sky Jackson was someone who was always using her platform to call out racism and to also just raise awareness on black issues. But here's one thing that I think was taken a bit too far. I want to introduce you to the term doxing. Doxing is a form of cyberbullying that uses sensitive or secret information, statements or records for the harassment, exposure, financial harm, or other exploitation of targeted individuals. Long story short, it's basically like you do something wrong and then I go on Twitter and say, here's someone's number, call them and tell them that they've done wrong things. That's like the simplification of the term doxing. And mind you, it wasn't just Sky Jackson, lots of people were doing this as well. But Sky Jackson is someone who had like a very huge, and still to this day has a very huge platform. So she went to Twitter and was like, okay, if you know someone who's racist or has done racist things, like DM me with like your receipts and then give me like their number, like their school address, so that I can leak that out to the world so that everyone knows that this person is a racist person. And as I said, like Sky Jackson wasn't the only one who was doing that. I remember going on like Instagram or like on like Twitter, and like there were pages like stuff like exposing racists where it was just like, okay, here's the person, here's what they said, here's their like phone number, and here's like their school address. And then people of course were like calling like their numbers, sending like horrible deep threats to like their numbers, or like calling and like emailing like their local schools, etc, etc, etc. I remember that time so prevalent. 16-year-old here, just here in bed, just watching people getting exposed. That was a time. That was really a time. And if you want to know how I feel so many like split things about doxing and doing stuff like that. On like one hand, I'm like, okay, the person who, if you tweeted something very, very problematic, you don't deserve to just be let off from it. You know, like you can't just say, oh, like here's like something like so offensive and then like nothing happens to you. Under that same breath, I'm also like, it's not my job and it's not my responsibility to educate someone who is clearly ignorant. Okay, I can kind of wrap my head around the point of like doxing and going through those extra measures. Now it's like, okay, this person who said like the N-word, and then now all of a sudden like their school has been leaked and like their parents are getting involved and everything. Now they know better. They're not going to say this or post this kind of stuff again. But then under that same breath, it can make black people look bad. And I'll tell you why. Like a phrase that I don't really like using at all, but it can give like a harmful stereotype that like black people are like playing the race card. What I mean by that is like we're constantly trying to find things or constantly trying to find racist things and trying to like dig up something so we can like cause chaos and be seen as like angry and hurt. And here's like another flip side to all of this as well. I don't think it is the place for non-black people to tell black people how to react to racism. What I mean by that, like contextually, like in school is such a very interesting place. for everyone. If you're a black person in school, it's a very interesting place because sometimes like racism can happen, and it's like you can tell a teacher, you can tell someone who you trust, and it doesn't get dealt with appropriately. Sometimes, even in historical context as well, lots of black people had to take racist people and racist behavior in the matters into their own hands. Okay, because truth be told, in 2020, everyone was like, I'm an ally, Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter. But on like a regular Tuesday, on like a regular Thursday, the only people who are defending black people and supporting and rooting for black people and fighting for the voices of black people are black people. You know, it's always going to be that way. And here's like a unique thing about like being black. If you go through something like racism or like discrimination, especially at like a young age, I want to focus more so on like a young age in school, secondary school, there's not an easy way, and there's not a one-way forward way to actually deal and navigate through that moment of time. And when you're young, of course, you obviously make mistakes. One thing that I can definitely say is that I feel like there's so many people, and I've seen it like in real time, when black people make a mistake, lots of non-black people like to like nitpick of that. They like to nitpick like bad qualities because then they run with it. In 2020, I can firsthand say, of course, not everything that was done during that time was perfect or executed perfectly during like the riots in 2020. However, it's kind of like people, I feel like lots of people, especially now I see on Twitter, as I said, they take the things that have gone wrong in 2020, they took the things that went wrong with the Black Lives Matter riot and protest, and they've ran with it, and they've made it seem like the Black Lives Matter were like, I don't know, like some like cult membership kind of thing, when that's really not the case. I'll say that people worked too hard in 2020 for people to label the protests and that time as a horrible time of just pure violence and chaos. As much as like awareness on black issues was really popular, people like the far right as well, they were also having a field day, they were also having a march, and lots of emergence and lots of popularity of far right really did grow as a result and like a aftermath of 2020. One thing about like the far right and people who are just like anti-black is that they believe that they are the victim because of like, it's like, oh my gosh, like now everything's about race, now everything's about political, like what about us, but it's like everything's always been about you. Like you've always been here's the thing, oh my gosh, there's so many people like online and in person who think that like straight white men or straight white women are being oppressed. Lots of people, they're like, oh my gosh, I can't deal with like this Black Lives Matter, I can't deal with like the pronouns, I can't deal with everything, like this generation, like they've taken everything, it's gone too far. So maybe you're thinking, why did I mention all of this? Like, what does this have to do with like the title of this video, which is talking all about careers? As I said, lots of people like to nitpick bad behaviors of black people. So when maybe someone has like a public image and they're doing something very, very well, as soon as they do something bad, the mainstream media runs with it. Because of how huge 2020 was and because of how huge BLM was, lots of people realize, if I speak for black issues, I can get mainstream attention. But equally speaking, if I speak bad about Black Lives Matter, that can equally get me mainstream attention because now I'm talking about such a prevalent issue and like contradicting things. Do you see what I'm saying? And in 2020, like there were so many posts and there were so many tweets who were like, black people, we need to speak up. Black people, we need the voices of black people amplified. And I'll always stick besides that. All black voices and all black stories matter. We need to amplify the stories of black people. Unfortunately, with the amplification of black voices, is equally the amplification of white people who are annoyed by the amplification of black voices. And because of how prevalent and how big racism actually is, the far right and those who are just simply against BLM, they can equally form and make a huge flipping social media presence and a huge platform from hate. I feel like something that's very harmful. People are like, oh, we need freedom of speech. Like, what happened to freedom of speech? Like, everything is so flipping censored and you can't say this and you can't say this. Everything needs to be political. And it's like people misconstrued like freedom of speech with just being dang right racist, because I don't believe that people who are racist or people who are like misogynist and horrible flipping people deserve to have platforms. But unfortunately now, especially with Twitter X, I don't know why, has become like so like flipping racist, and We all know who's running it. Circling back to my point about rage baiting, someone who's really been able to profit off of rage baiting and annoying the black community is a man by the name of Kevinleonardo. If you don't know who he is, for reference, here's a picture of Kevinleonardo if you've never met the fella. Kevinleonardo is an influencer, YouTuber, and TikToker. Has he influenced anything good? No. That man is flipping crazy. But one thing that he did that sparks him so much controversy was him doing blackface in Big Goals 2024, 2023. He done blackface, and he done that because he knew what he was doing. But Kevin is someone that's like, he can't run if he doesn't have controversy. You know, I don't even, like, he needs, like, clicks. He doesn't have an audience, he needs clicks. And one of the best ways nowadays to get clicks is just to rage bait or make controversial tweets and comments. And he's someone, like, he knew what he was doing this blackface, because that was going to garnish him so much attention, so much media attention, and so many people were going to do think pieces and YouTube videos talking about him. There's this thing where it's like, all press is good press. What that means is, like, if you've got good press or if you've got bad press, it generally doesn't matter because you've got eyes on you. And if you've got eyes on you, you can, like, leverage from that, get yourself a nice little following, or get yourself like a follow-up video to get you more attention. But that is generally like a principle and something that only heavily favors non-black people in comparison to black people. Because Kevin doesn't need to apologize or do anything like that. Like, in a sense, Kevin does this blackface, the black community is annoyed. He sees that there's so many people doing doing like YouTube videos, doing like their think pieces and everything like that. What he has to do now is just sit back and watch everyone, like the black community, just basically promote him even more. We're pushing out his name even more and more and more and more and more and more. He doesn't need to do he actually generally doesn't need to do an apology video. Now all he has to do is just kind of forget that he ever did that. Now he just has to go back on his TikTok and keep posting his same crazy ass videos. Going back to my point on how lots of people like to like nitpick like the black community and just primarily talk about like all like the bad things that happen with like BLM, I want to focus our attention on a white lady by the name of Candace Owens. So Candace Owens is someone who's like a walking contradiction in my eyes. She is a very interesting case. And Candace, was it 2020 or 2022? But it was some year, her and Kanye West wore this BS. They wore this BS. White Lives, what crazy thing to say, like White Lives Matter is like a movement that came about as like a response to BLM by like white supremacists, because they feel like they're being oppressed, and it's like, where. But, you know, I'm just gonna skip, I don't want to talk about her anymore. But seeing her and everything that she did with Kanye with the shirts, it made me actually think about a very interesting point. As much as a black community, we have so many external factors and so many external people who just like don't like us, truth be told, and are doing so many things to like sabotage our careers. We also have so many internal problems as well, and how divided and split the black community actually is. And like in this video, I've titled it "How and Why Using and Annoying the Black Community Can Get You a Career." But here's another interesting point that I can actually really talk about. Sometimes we as a black community, we don't even help our own in order to like benefit their own careers. And I'm going to tell you about that why. Does that make sense? I'm going to tell you about that why. That's not English. One thing that I've really learned is like so many black people were generally not on the same page. And I remember this is something that's very interesting to think about. One of my friends, she was like, she's black, and she was like, I don't like being in a room with all black people, like a huge like wedding like filled of black people, because I know something's going to go wrong. And at first I was like, woof. But then I thought about it even more. And then I thought about it and like contextually speaking, I think I've said contextually like 1 billion times in this video, but like I thought about it in like the outer lens of like the whole black community, and we are really so divided. We're united by race but divided by so many different factors. And this is where I put my African hat on. See what I did there? This is the Tanzanian flag. I'm Tanzanian. Just get on with the video, Roderick. Okay, this part is going to be a bit less like facts and like here's like your proof. I'm going to be a bit more ranting. You brace yourself. Okay, to give a bit of context, so I'm 20 years old and I've grown up in the UK all my life. But I'm from Tanzania, both my parents are Tanzanian. And I've been to Tanzania about like I don't even know how many times I've been because I've just been so many times. I literally love it there so much. But one thing that I don't love is how, this isn't even like just a Tanzanian thing, this is like an African thing that I've noticed, is that lots of African people applaud and praise whiteness so much. This time last year I was in Tanzania, and last time I was there was in 2019, and from 2019 to 2024 I've seen that there's been like a huge like rise of like Asian owned businesses, and there's been so many like Indian pharmacies and like Asian run businesses, and I've seen like they've been able to, and also roads. I'll just be driving around in Tanzania and like I've just see like Chinese writing like everywhere. And something that I've realized is that sometimes there are black people or like black African people who trust maybe an Asian person more or a white person more than they would a black person. To further prove my point, let's say like someone grew up in Africa, they were born and raised in Africa, and then let's say like one day they wanted to like start like a charity or like run a marathon to like raise awareness or like improve the like conditions for like children, black children in Africa. I feel like African people or like their families and stuff would be like, oh yeah, that's really good, that's really great, good for you. But let's say like now like a white person from like Holland was like, you know, campaigning, raising so much money, and then they went to like a village in like Kenya. Now that white person will get put in like a huge pedestal by African people, by black people. It's like they don't even need to do anything, but as black people will be like, oh my gosh, like Karibu Sana, like welcome, like oh my gosh, like a white person has come and saved the day for us. It's like sometimes we as black people applaud white people so much. We applaud people who are like outsiders who care for black people more than black people who care about black people. That was a whole read. I've seen this as well. I've seen it in my real life. I've seen it in people who I know. It's like there's so many black people who are so critical of black people. So critical. Like they talk about black people like they're like, I don't even know. Like just dumb, stupid people. But when white people come around, when an Asian person comes around, they try and be like buddy with them, but hate their own. There's some, and it's like that generally doesn't help us. Like in a sense of like a career space or like a workspace, sometimes we hear like, oh, you have to help our own, we have to help our own. And as much as I'm all for like helping my own, there's so many people who's like, I can't even help you. I feel like as a black community, like we're very open and we're very welcoming and very respectful to so many people. And that's not a bad thing. But I think one thing that's a bad thing is that so many people who aren't black know that they can like confide and feel like sheltered by black people. And someone who's proof of this is a content creator by the name of Muradmerali. Muradmerali is a very interesting case. So if you don't know who he is, Muradmerali is a content creator, and lots of his content has focused on like Love Island, but in particular he found a niche talking about black issues, but talking a lot about like black women specifically, but not talking about them in like a hateful way, but actually like singing their praises. And because of that, lots of black women have supported him and have stuck beside him. And he got into lots of controversy. I think it was like 2-3 years ago. Lots of very weird like videos of stuff got leaked from him. And even though he handled the situation absolutely terribly, still to this day, so many black women have defended him and been like, oh no, we all need to like forgive and like, you know, need to move on and heal. He needs to heal. And the thing that's kind of like sad about that is that when non-black creators like mess up, or when non-black people mess up, sometimes black people, we're the ones who are like, we need to forgive, we need to let them heal, but we don't even have that energy for our own. And because of this, so many people who aren't black have like confided in like the black community and like as I said, like seek like refuge in us. Like we're like the fighters for them. And I think someone who's really been able to like exploit and benefit his career from that is Justin Timberlake. I think we all have heard of the infamous Super Bowl incident with him and Janet Jackson when he ripped Janet Jackson's like shirt way too far, which exposed her left breast. And because of that, Janet Jackson literally got dragged and cancelled, and the music industry and so many people in powerful positions tried to do everything that they could to like punish her. Even though it literally wasn't even her fault that her breast was exposed in the Super Bowl. It was literally just an accident by Justin Timberlake. All Justin had to do was to come out and said, that was my fault, I apologize, I literally ripped way too far. And maybe the situation would have been diffused a bit better. And during the midst of that, Justin Timberlake was still collaborating with black artists and still culturally appropriating, and his career was just fine. But Janet Jackson, that's not the case. That wasn't the case for her. I think this is like the perfect example of how someone can like appropriate from the black community, take so much from the black community, but when it's time to speak about a black issue, when it's time to actually defend a black woman, Justin Timberlake was very, very, very silent. And to this day, it's something that's generally so mad. It's like, you look at the degree that Janet Jackson was cancelled upon, but even to this day, even though cancel culture is something that is so big right now, cancel culture mainly only applies to black people and black creators. There's so many white artists and so many white creators who have said and done the most absolute crazy things, but to this day, their careers are doing just fine. Just fine. But honestly, that is that for today's video. I really hope that you've enjoyed it. I've been speaking for such a long time, so if you've made it to this end of this video, I appreciate you so much. Let me know about your thoughts and opinions about this video in the comment section down below, and let's keep having like this conversation as well. If you want to keep conversating with me, my socials are also in the description, and I'm excited to hear from you guys. And yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you so much for watching, and God bless you all. Peace.
Tire marks, tire marks.